Bryan Kohberger, the man who seemed ordinary to everyone around him, suddenly became the center of a chilling investigation that would expose secrets no one in the quiet town could have imagined. It was a night that began like any other in the quiet suburban town, the streets empty except for the occasional car passing by, and the soft hum of streetlights casting long shadows across the sidewalks. Inside one modest house, the warmth and safety of family life turned into a scene of unimaginable horror. 4 lives were brutally ended in a manner so cold and deliberate that it immediately sent shockwaves through the community. Neighbors who had waved to the family just hours before were now left grappling with disbelief, struggling to reconcile the image of normalcy they had known with the violent reality that had unfolded behind closed doors. Police were called to the scene amid a swirl of panic and confusion, and first responders described a level of devastation that went beyond the ordinary. The initial investigation revealed signs of forced entry, but there were also details that didn't fit a simple burglary gone wrong. The meticulous nature of the crime suggested that the perpetrator had studied the household, planned each step, and executed it with an eerie calm. Detectives combed through the home for hours, documenting every detail, from fingerprints to smudges, from discarded items to hidden clues, each one telling a story of the night's grim events. As the hours passed, the news began to spread. Local media outlets descended on the town, capturing footage of the police tape and interviewing stunned neighbors who could not believe that something so violent could happen in their peaceful streets. The story went viral, reaching beyond the town's borders, and quickly became a national sensation. Social media was flooded with speculation, theories, and condolences, while police continued to piece together fragments of evidence, racing against time to find the person responsible. In the midst of this chaos, the town itself seemed to change overnight. Streets that were once filled with children playing and neighbors chatting became places of whispered caution, where every unfamiliar car or shadow sparked suspicion. Friends of the victims, once taken for granted, now appeared fragile under the weight of grief, trying to make sense of a tragedy that defied understanding. Meanwhile, investigators discovered subtle signs that suggested the crime was not random, that the perpetrator had a specific motive and a deep understanding of the family's routines. Every unanswered question seemed to grow heavier, feeding the public's obsession with the case. Law enforcement held briefings, carefully revealing only the barest details to avoid compromising the investigation, but even their restraint could not prevent rumors from spreading. The community, bound together by shock and fear, waited for answers, knowing that the revelation of the truth would either bring relief or plunge them further into the darkness of uncertainty. By the end of the night, the quiet neighborhood that had once seemed so safe had been forever altered, its residents awakened to the chilling reality that violence could strike even in the most ordinary and unsuspecting places. Days after the horrifying crime, the tension in the town was palpable. Residents went about their daily routines with a sense of unease, glancing nervously at strangers and questioning the safety of their own homes. Law enforcement, meanwhile, worked tirelessly behind the scenes, following leads, analyzing evidence, and piecing together the puzzle that had left so many on edge. Then, without warning, a breakthrough came that stunned everyone. Bryan Kohberger, a man whose life had appeared ordinary to neighbors and acquaintances, was arrested in connection with the murders. The news spread like wildfire, leaving the community in shock. People struggled to reconcile the image of the calm, unassuming individual they had seen in passing with the allegations of a violent, calculated crime. The arrest was carried out with precision, and law enforcement emphasized the strength of their evidence while keeping specific details under wraps. Prosecutors hinted that what they had uncovered went far beyond the immediate crime scene, suggesting a level of planning and intent that was deeply disturbing. Media outlets descended on the town, broadcasting images of the suspect and reciting fragments of the investigation, each report fueling public curiosity and fear. The story dominated headlines, and social media became a forum for speculation, theories, and heated debate. As authorities conducted searches of properties connected to Kohberger, they revealed little, but dropped enough hints to suggest that the investigation was uncovering a pattern of behavior that had gone unnoticed for months. Friends, classmates, and colleagues scrambled to reconcile their memories of a seemingly normal life with the unfolding narrative of premeditated violence. Prosecutors, aware of the growing public attention, prepared for a high-profile trial that would examine not only the events of that night, but also the life and mindset of the accused. The arrest raised questions that had previously gone unasked. How could someone so integrated into the community commit such acts? What had been missed by those closest to him? Investigators hinted at digital footprints, movements, and behaviors that painted a picture of a suspect who had been careful yet flawed in ways that ultimately led to his capture. The arrest itself became a spectacle, with news cameras and journalists documenting every moment, creating a visual record that further entrenched the case in the public consciousness. As the initial shock subsided, the community began to grapple with a mix of fear, anger, and curiosity. Families who had once taken their safety for granted now questioned every decision, every visitor, every late-night sound. Meanwhile, law enforcement and prosecutors prepared for the next phase of the investigation, knowing that the details they were about to reveal would not only illuminate the crime, but also expose the chilling depths of premeditation and deception. In the midst of national attention, the town faced an uncomfortable truth. The arrest of Bryan Kohberger marked the beginning of a long and complex legal process, one that would uncover secrets, challenge assumptions, and keep the nation watching with bated breath as the story unfolded. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense and heavy, charged with anticipation as prosecutors began revealing the details that had been hidden from the public. Every piece of evidence, every observation, every subtle clue was carefully presented to build a picture of a crime that was as calculated as it was horrifying. Security footage from nearby locations showed movements that, at first glance, seemed mundane, but under careful examination revealed a deliberate pattern that connected the suspect to the scene. Phone records and digital data offered a timeline of communications and movements, hinting at premeditation and a level of planning that chilled investigators to the bone. Forensic teams testified about trace evidence, fibers, fingerprints, and microscopic particles that tied the suspect to key points in the house, revealing an unsettling attention to detail. It became clear that the suspect had meticulously studied the household, noting routines, entry points, and vulnerabilities, and had executed the crime in a way that suggested both confidence and control. Prosecutors also disclosed findings from social media analysis showing behavior and interactions that, in hindsight, raised red flags about the suspect's mindset and potential motives. These revelations painted a picture not of a spontaneous act, but of someone who had orchestrated every aspect of the event, leaving only faint traces for investigators to follow. The courtroom audience, journalists, and public observers were struck by the contrast between the ordinary life the suspect had appeared to lead and the sinister complexity revealed in the evidence. As prosecutors presented emails, texts, and location data, it became evident that the suspect had taken deliberate steps to mislead authorities and cover tracks. Yet small mistakes, a misplaced item, a time-stamped photo, a forgotten interaction, had ultimately tied him to the crime. Witnesses offered accounts of minor but telling behaviors, unexplained absences, unusual interest in certain locations, and subtle patterns that now seemed ominous. Every revelation deepened the sense that this was not a crime of opportunity, but a meticulously executed plan. Investigators also uncovered psychological aspects, showing a duality in the suspect's personality, outwardly calm and unassuming, yet capable of calculated manipulation and deception. The prosecution laid out how these traits had manifested in actions leading up to the night of the murders, suggesting a level of cunning that went unnoticed by friends, neighbors, and even family. The more evidence was revealed, the more the audience realized the depths of preparation involved, and the courtroom was filled with a mix of fascination and horror. Each detail seemed to pull back another layer of the story, exposing a life and a mind that had hidden malevolence beneath a facade of normalcy. By the time the prosecutors concluded their presentation, it was clear that the case was not only about a violent act, but about uncovering a web of planning, deceit, and secrets that challenged every assumption about how such a crime could occur. The revelations left a lasting impact on everyone present, as the reality of the crime and the shocking secrets behind it became impossible to ignore. Just when the case seemed to follow a clear path, unexpected twists began to surface, throwing both the investigators and the public into a whirlwind of uncertainty. Key witnesses who had initially provided statements began to recant or modify their accounts, creating gaps and contradictions in the narrative that prosecutors had painstakingly built. Forensic reports were re-examined, and new tests revealed discrepancies that had been overlooked, forcing a re-evaluation of previously accepted timelines and connections. These developments painted a picture of a case far more complex than anyone had anticipated, suggesting that what appeared to be straightforward evidence might have been carefully manipulated. Investigators discovered that the suspect had left misleading clues at the crime scene, actions seemingly designed to misdirect law enforcement and obscure true intentions. Items were placed in unexpected locations, and digital footprints were deliberately altered, indicating a level of strategic thinking that went beyond mere panic. The twists did not stop there. Analysis of communications revealed interactions with previously unknown individuals, raising questions about potential accomplices or outside influence. The courtroom, already tense, became a battleground of conflicting accounts, with defense attorneys and prosecutors clashing over the interpretation of every detail. As the evidence shifted, so did public perception, with theories circulating that challenged prior assumptions and added layers of intrigue to the case. Each revelation forced the community and the nation to reconsider the suspect's motives, methods, and the possible extent of involvement. In the midst of these developments, the suspect's behavior in custody also came under scrutiny, as subtle actions and statements hinted at an awareness of the twists unfolding around him. Investigators explored patterns in past behavior, searching for indicators that could explain the complexity of the crime and the attempts to obscure it. Meanwhile, digital forensics uncovered traces of deleted messages, altered metadata, and online activity designed to confuse investigators, revealing a careful and deliberate effort to manipulate perception. These twists emphasized a chilling reality. The suspect had not only committed a violent crime, but had anticipated scrutiny and attempted to shape the investigation in ways that were both sophisticated and dangerous. As the trial progressed, the narrative constantly shifted, leaving both legal teams and the public questioning what was real and what had been engineered. Each new piece of information added tension, uncertainty, and fascination, deepening the sense that the case was a puzzle of extraordinary complexity. The community, already traumatized by the original events, grappled with the knowledge that deception and manipulation had been integral to the crime, shaking trust in the seemingly ordinary individuals around them. By the time the trial approached its final stages, it had become clear that the case was not merely about the act of murder, but about unraveling a web of cunning, misdirection, and hidden connections. The twists left a lasting impression, proving that in this case, nothing could be taken at face value, and the shocking depth of planning and deceit would be remembered long after the verdict was delivered. After months of intense investigation and courtroom drama, the trial finally reached its climactic conclusion. Every piece of evidence, every witness testimony, and every expert analysis had been meticulously presented, revealing a complex web of planning, deception, and hidden behaviors. Prosecutors emphasized the shocking secrets uncovered during the investigation, highlighting how the suspect had carefully orchestrated each step, manipulated perceptions, and attempted to mislead authorities. The courtroom was filled with a mix of anticipation, tension, and unease as the final arguments were delivered. Jurors, who had spent countless hours sifting through testimony, documents, and digital records, faced the monumental task of piecing together a coherent understanding from the overwhelming volume of information. The weight of the case rested not only on the physical evidence, but on the unsettling psychological portrait of the suspect that had emerged over months of careful examination. As the judge called for deliberations, the community outside the courthouse held its collective breath, waiting for the decision that would provide closure, or perhaps deepen the lingering questions. Days passed as the jury reviewed every detail, revisiting timelines, reconciling contradictory statements, and weighing the credibility of each piece of evidence. The process was painstaking and deliberate, reflecting the gravity of the crimes and the extraordinary complexity of the case. Families of the victims, still grappling with grief and shock, followed every update closely, searching for signs of justice. When the jury finally returned, the atmosphere in the courtroom was electric, charged with anticipation and tension. The foreperson delivered the verdict, and the words echoed with the weight of months of investigation and trial proceedings. Relief, disbelief, and sorrow swept through the room, reflecting the varied emotions of those present. The verdict not only addressed the immediate crime, but also acknowledged the meticulous planning, deceit, and manipulation that had characterized the suspect's actions. It underscored the chilling reality that the crime had been more than a moment of violence. It had been a calculated orchestration designed to achieve specific outcomes while concealing the perpetrator's identity. In the aftermath, the town struggled to process the impact of the case. Streets that had once felt safe now carried the memory of tragedy and the knowledge that danger can reside behind ordinary appearances. Media coverage continued, analyzing every aspect of the verdict and the evidence that led to it, dissecting the psychological profile of the suspect, and exploring the implications for law enforcement, criminal justice, and public safety. The case left an indelible mark, shaping conversations about crime, security, and vigilance in ways that would persist for years. Residents grappled with the knowledge that while justice had been served, the scars of fear, mistrust, and loss could not be easily erased. Families, investigators, and the community at large were left to reckon with the haunting truths revealed during the trial, reflecting on the complexity of human behavior and the hidden darkness that can exist behind familiar faces. The conclusion of the trial offered a sense of closure, yet it also served as a sobering reminder that even in seemingly ordinary lives, extraordinary and terrifying events can unfold, leaving lasting impacts on all who bear witness.